You know that feeling, right? When you're in an argument with someone who is just completely wrong, but they are so certain they're right. I mean, they've got no expertise, no real evidence, but they have more confidence than you've probably had about anything in your entire life. And you're just standing there kind of baffled, thinking, how? Seriously, how can someone know so little and yet be so incredibly sure of themselves?
Well, believe it or not, the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer pretty much nailed this almost 200 years ago. He had this just brilliant, really sharp insight that gets right to the core of it. He said, intelligence creates doubt, stupidity creates certainty. Wow, that just cuts right through, doesn't it?
Okay, so let's really dive into this. Today, we're exploring what I'm calling the certainty trap. This tendency we all have to mistake a tiny piece of the puzzle for the whole picture. We're going to break down the psychology behind why this happens, and maybe more importantly, how you can avoid falling into that trap yourself. So let's kick things off with what we can call the certainty of fools. Now, you might think this is a recent thing, problem of the internet age or social media, but nope. Schopenhauer diagnosed this exact same phenomenon 2 centuries ago. He saw this confident ignorance everywhere, from the halls of universities to the fanciest parties in high society. So what was his big insight? The core mechanism he pointed to is this incredibly simple but really powerful loop. It goes like this. The less you know about something, the simpler it looks. And the simpler it looks, well, the more certain you feel that you understand it. Your ignorance literally makes all the messy, complicated details completely invisible. He actually had a name for this state, the fool's paradise. And just think about that for a second. It's a state of happy, blissful confidence that only exists because you are completely and totally unaware of how much you don't know. And here's the really scary part. Any of us can wander into this paradise without even realizing we're there. To really get our heads around this, there's a fantastic story I want to share. It's called The Elephant in the Dark. It's a timeless parable from the poet Rumi, but you'll see it feels like it was written for our modern media age. And this is a really important shift, because we're going to pivot from pointing fingers at those people to realizing, hey, this is a universal trap that affects all of us. Okay, so here's how the story goes. Picture a group of people walking into a room. The room is completely, totally dark. Now, they don't know it, but in the center of that dark room, there's an elephant. This elephant, it's real. It represents some big, complex, multifaceted reality, something you just can't understand from one single perspective. Since they can't see anything, each person reaches out and touches just one part of the elephant. And here's the key. Each touch is a partial truth. The person touching the trunk is feeling something real. Same for the person touching the leg. But, and here's the punchline. When they come out of the room, they all confidently declare what was inside. The one who touched the trunk yells, "It's a snake." The one who touched the leg insists, "No, it's a pillar." Every single one of them is certain. And every single conclusion, based on their limited partial truth, is a total lie. They've mistaken a tiny piece for the whole thing. And this is just such a perfect analogy for our modern information environment, isn't it? Think about it. That crazy headline you saw, that's just someone grabbing the trunk. That one statistic that went viral, that's feeling the leg. An opinion piece, a viral clip, an expert soundbite, each one is just a tiny part, like feeling the ear or the tail or the texture of the skin. Each piece gives you a sense of familiarity, but it's not the same as real understanding. So here's the core lesson, the thing we really have to burn into our brains. Touching is not the same as seeing. And familiarity is not the same as knowledge. Just because you've seen a bunch of headlines or clips about a topic, that does not mean you understand it. In fact, that's what's so dangerous. That feeling of familiarity can create this powerful, totally false illusion of expertise. Okay, so how does this actually play out in the real world today? Let's look at a really concrete example of this elephant in the dark parable in action. We'll call it being inside the certainty tents. This is all about how our brains can somehow hold two totally contradictory truths at the exact same time. I want you to imagine you're walking around a fair and you see two different political campaign tents. You step inside tent A. In here, the story is perfectly clear. The central problem is injustice. The cause, systemic barriers. And the solution, structural reform. And you know what? Inside this tent, it all makes perfect sense. Then you walk over and step inside tent B. It's a completely different world. Here, the problem is decay, the cause, individual failure, and the solution, personal responsibility. And the crazy thing is, standing inside tent B, this story also feels completely 100% true.
So, what's going on here? Why does each tent feel so utterly right, even though they completely contradict each other? Well, it all comes down to psychology. Inside each tent, the story is locally coherent. It all fits together smoothly within its own frame. And our brains love that. We get this little hit of relief from having our uncertainty reduced. And our brain misinterprets that feeling of cognitive ease as a signal for truth. It feels right, so we think it is right.
All right, so we've spent some time diagnosing the problem, right? The certainty trap, the elephant in the dark, the certainty tense. So the big question is, how do we fix it? What do we do? Well, let's talk about a solution. Let's talk about how to build a candle. This is a really practical way to start seeing the whole elephant, not just one of its parts. Now, the first and maybe the most important thing to get here is that the goal isn't just to collect more opinions. It's not about just visiting more tents and saying, ooh, that's interesting. Rumi's actual lesson is way sharper than that. The real goal is to build one single coherent model that can actually explain all the different parts you're seeing. So how do you actually do that? Here's a simple 4-step process for building your candle. Step 1. For each side, extract their touch report. What are their core threats, their promises, their morals? Step 2. Identify the constraints. What are the hard facts that are true no matter which tent you're in? Step 3. Name the real, unavoidable trade-offs, things like freedom versus safety, or growth versus equity. And finally, step 4. You build one single, unified statement that explains why each side feels so compelling to its followers, and crucially, what each side is choosing to leave out. Okay, let's start to bring this all home. As we wrap things up, I want to talk about the wisdom of doubt. Because at the end of the day, embracing doubt is the only real antidote to that comfortable, confident ignorance we've been exploring. So let's circle all the way back to Schopenhauer's big idea and lay it out side by side. On one side, you have what he called stupidity. It creates certainty. It's what mistakes familiarity for genuine expertise, and it is completely immune to being corrected. But on the other side, you have intelligence. And what does that do? It creates doubt. It's the voice in your head that's always asking, what am I missing here? It's what actively goes looking for counter-arguments, not to lose, but to learn. You know, the Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius put this so perfectly. He wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." And that right there, that is the fundamental mindset you need to escape the certainty trap. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Take a moment and really think about this. What are you absolutely confident about, and why? Is that confidence really built on seeing the whole elephant, or is it possible you've just been holding on to the trunk for a really long time? Because maybe the wisest person isn't the one who has all the answers, but the one who never ever stops questioning.